Hi, everyone. Welcome to Call Me Crazy. I'm Erin Matiteyahu, joined with Michael and this is Call Me Crazy, where we interview inspiring entrepreneurs like today's guest, Taly Matiteyahu, who is a lawyer turned dating app founder who's balancing a day job and self-funding and building a really cool company. Taly, we're really excited to hear about what you've built and have you on the pod today. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about the journey to this new app, and I'm excited to talk about that, but I want to hear how you got to that point.
Yeah, so I've actually wanted to build this app for many years, or build this concept. It was born in 2012 after I ate at a blackout restaurant and got to know people by dining in the dark, not seeing them.
So it's like pitch black, right? You're just
pitch
eating
black. Can't see see your hand in front of your face, literally nothing. Your eyes don't adjust.
Where's that?
How was the food too? Like, was it more intense when you're eating?
The food was not notable, but it was notable about the food was that you don't realize how many times when you can see whether or not there's food on your fork when you put it in your mouth. You put an empty fork in your mouth a lot when you can't see because you're not paying attention. Like, you don't know what you're stabbing on the plate.
That sounds dangerous.
So you definitely, the dining experience was like eye-opening, obviously not eye-opening, the opposite, metaphorically eye-opening. In the sense that, you realize how much you take advantage as a sighted person. You could see what you're eating. You can see how much food is on your fork. You can see if there's food on your fork. You know where your cup is. You know where your silverware is. So it was definitely an incredible experience. It was at a center for the deaf and the blind. And the idea was to help, folks understand what is it like to not be abled in a certain way. And so it was truly amazing. And the experience was communal, and they let us know, if you want to share your experience with people at your table, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But something sparked a conversation between us, and we just started talking. And it was, it was just crazy how quickly we were able to open up to each other, and we didn't have any assumptions about who the other person was because we couldn't see them. We weren't worried about what we looked like. And it was just an incredible dinner. And I saw the couple afterwards, and I realized I would have assumed we had nothing in common just based on what you look like, what you're wearing, what your style is, and other facets. Like, people make those assumptions based on race, ethnicity, age, all of these different things that it's keeping us from connecting. And so since then, I was like, I must like create this system where people can meet in the dark. And I feel like now the comparable example is Love is Blind on Netflix.
Oh my God, I was just thinking that.
Yeah. So I've had this idea for a long time. Then I saw the Love is Blind on Netflix, and I was like, okay, well, they made it happen. Obviously, for a reality TV show, my hope was to do like live events in the dark, sort of similar to the dining experience. But then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, well, that's not really scalable anyway. So how can I make this happen in this modern age? And so it came to me doing an audio only blind speed dating app.
I love the idea, an audio only blind speeding date app. And was this your first company idea, or had you thought about building? Because it seems like you were very crisp and clear that you wanted to bring this to the world after you experienced the blind dining. Is it your first idea? Your first time entrepreneur, I guess?
I guess it's not my first. So I also created a dog treat bag in 2015 to 2017. Yeah, as you know, I'm a dog mom. I've got 2 pups. One of them is very anxious and high strung. And so I had kept making these little treat bags for him on my own. And I was like, well, why don't I just try, making these and selling these? So that was my first venture, not, a tech company, not an app. Yeah. So it's a tangible product, which is a very different experience.
Totally.
And with the dating app now, it's called blinkdate.com, right? The blinkdate.com.
Yep.
What do you see as like the results after the dates? Because I think a lot of people watch Love is Blind. There was a very intense connection right away. It seems like you can really dive deep when you don't see that person. And it's almost in a way like everything's going a little more old school. Because now we're like drifting away from like, all right, let's get away from like seeing people, even though we have these great screens in our face. Clubhouse is really popular right now. How are those connections like post app? Have you followed up with anybody using the app?
No, so we're just we're about to launch our beta. So we have though, in the meantime, because we wanted to kind of test out the concept and expose people to the idea of getting to know someone in this audio only world. And we've done a podcast called Date in a Blank, and we've paired people for their 10-minute audio dates. And we have a couple episodes out, and we have some more coming out. And we do plan to follow up with the couples who matched on that to see how it went from there. But we're giving them a little bit of time before we do that.
Can you walk us through like just quickly how the app works? Is it like a traditional app? And then what does that first date look like? Can it only be 10 minutes? And then do you get to see their face after, or like you find out their name, I guess, eventually, and then you can just go Google them?
Then the stalking. So we want to prevent that because we want people to, again, to kind of get past those assumptions that they would make based off an Instagram profile, because to be honest, Instagram versus reality is a real thing. You're only presenting a facade to the world.
For sure.
And so the way the dating app works is you put in very basic parameters when you sign up: your age, your sexuality, your gender, your age preference, your geographic proximity, of folks that you're interested in. And we match based on those. We're not doing anything about like profession or education level or ethnicity or race. Like, to us, none of that matters when you actually have a connection with someone. And so people put that information in when they sign up, and then they let us know when they're available. And based on their availability, we match them with folks that match their criteria. They have their 10-minute date. It is only 10 minutes. And one of the reasons for that is statistically, people make a decision on traditional dating apps within 4 seconds. So it's a lot longer than you get on a normal dating app.
That's harsh.
So you have 10 minutes for your date. We might play with that time if folks think it's too short or too long, but through our podcast, we've surveyed our participants, and a lot of them think it's the perfect amount of time, because you get a good sense of whether there's conversational chemistry within 10 minutes. And so after the date, you get sort of like when you get out of an Uber, you get a little, pop up on your phone saying, evaluate your ride, give it a rating, your driver rating. You're doing something similar for your date. We have a little field for notes if you want to jot something down, but you let us know if, you definitely want to talk to this person again, you might want to talk to them, or you definitely don't want to talk to them again. And in addition to that, because we know love isn't blind, we do what we call glances, where we show folks nameless photos. So there's no Googling and trying to connect the dots between people. They're nameless photos with very basic parameters. I did forget to mention that during the sign up, we ask people's smoking, drug habits, lifestyle type things that might not, make folks not compatible. So that'll show up with the photo, and folks will do the same kind of evaluation of, definitely interested, might be interested if we have a connection, and not so interested. And if you match on both of those things, then you have a match and you're able to chat in the app until you're ready to take it offline. And
did you have a lot of experience with the other dating apps?
I actually did not in the context of dating, but I did in the context of like Bumble BFF, like trying to find social connections. And I personally found it really overwhelming even for that. So I can't even imagine the dating, kind of trying to use it to find a partner. And maybe it's just me because I have a terrible memory. When I match with someone and start messaging with them and 3 days go by, I would have to then go back to their profile when I reopen the message, try to remember who it was that they were and what we were talking about, and then kind of pick up the thread of the conversation. And when you have, 5-10 conversations ongoing, it's really hard to do that. So I really struggled with that personally.
We both met on a dating app 4 years ago, The League.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So we met on the dating app. And I don't know, we're both in LA. So dating in LA is...
All of us are in LA.
All of us are in LA. Dating in LA is a lot weirder than a lot of people think. It's a very weird city. Weird, interesting people all over the place. So I'm sure we both went on a lot of dates.
I did.
And dating through the apps was, I don't know. I guess it's hard because you commit to going to meet these people all the time. And we
in LA, that's a big commitment.
Yeah, if you're on the west side and the east side, you don't want to meet. But it is interesting because we never even decided to have like a phone call or anything before. It was just like this cold way in. And with your app, it makes so much sense. Like, let's have a phone call. Let's see like how this could actually be or what our conversation would be. So it's not awkward when you show up. And I know there's a lot of texting. You're going off the app and texting. But I never felt like I was getting to know somebody even more through the text. It was just like, let me just meet you. Are you a weirdo? Are you not weird?
Yeah, I would just go straight to the date too, usually. And I was like really open to it. But I know a lot of people hated it. They didn't want to get ready for a date.
It was like
another day. It was like work. But I just looked at it like, okay, I'm going out to dinner, get a drink. Like, how bad could it be? And like, luckily, I didn't have any terrible dates. Like, obviously, most were bad. And then luckily, I met Michael. But yeah, I think getting a little bit of emotional connection ahead of time might save you time going across town to meet them in person.
Was there any scientific like evidence behind a lot of this dating app? Because I feel like there was something there that's like a little bit more special than just the text and you're seeing the photos and all those triggers that are like, oh, well, not good. Swipe left, swipe right.
More open-minded.
Yeah,
there's a psychology behind people becoming more attractive to you as you get to know them and have deeper connections, which is why, you might meet someone and be friends with them for a couple of years before you realize I have a romantic interest within them, or, less than a couple of years, more than a couple of years. It's because that's like that attraction grows. And so, and on the flip side, when you are really, really attracted to someone, you actually tend to overlook things that might be a red flag or character misalignments or value misalignments. And so there is a lot to be said for making a connection first, seeing if you have those alignments before you kind of jump into everything else, which is kind of how traditional dating apps work now. You swipe, swipe, you have some messages. Conversational chemistry via text, I think, is also not as representative of chemistry in real life. Not to say that audio is, exactly the same as in real life, but it's a lot easier to see if you have that banter, that level of kind of connection, because folks don't have hours to contemplate how they're going to respond to a message. So it's just a little bit more emulative of real life to have an audio conversation rather than a text conversation. And so I think the other thing, just to mention, in this COVID world, as people are taking things a little bit slower in terms of meeting in real life, it's actually created what is being called like a slow love movement, and people are getting to know folks more before meeting in person. And that actually means that when they do meet in person, they have a higher level of investment in the person that they're meeting, because they're not just a random person that they swiped on, chatted with a little bit on an app, and now we're meeting in person. They're somebody that they've already gotten to know a little bit, and it's making those dates more successful. And that isn't to say, Erin, I actually really love the idea of like, I'm going to get ready and go for this date, because I think dating should be fun and we shouldn't put so much pressure on it. So I still think folks should take that mentality and just go on dates, because you can learn something about other people, about yourself. Even if it's not going to be a romantic connection, they might be a really great person for you to just meet. But in terms of just kind of making it a more efficient process, spending 10 minutes up front before you kind of dive into everything else can weed out a lot of bad apples and save you a lot of time.
Absolutely. And 10 minutes is an approachable time. Like, you could do anything for 10 minutes.
When I was listening to that, it was making me think of house hunting, because house hunting became the same way recently, where you got to make sure you really like it. Like, you got to schedule a time, maybe review it a little bit, maybe drive by. It sounds so similar.
See if the photos actually see if the reality actually matches the photos.
Yeah.
See if the finances line up.
It's so fun.
I'd love to get into a little bit more behind the scenes of how you, as a non-technical founder, like built this app, because I know I have a friend who built I think a wedding planning app, and she's non-technical, and it takes a lot of like management and like finding the right resources. So tell us a little bit about how you fit that in with your job and where you started and where you're at now with it about to launch.
So it's really hard. I think there are three options when you're a non-technical person who wants to build something. You can either learn how to build something, which is also really hard. And there are boot camps and resources online, and some people manage to figure that out, but I did not have the bandwidth to do that. The next option is paying someone like in-house. So trying to, hire someone to be part of your team or find a co-founder who's technical. I think that's really hard too, because most of the time folks who kind of become founding partners with one technical, one non-technical, they'd worked together in the past. So they already have an existing relationship. They share the same passion for the idea. If you have an idea and you're trying to find somebody to be your partner and you don't have anyone that you work with that has that passion, it's really hard to just find a random stranger who's a technical person who's like, yes, I will do this work for a minimal amount of money or for equity. And you don't know the person very well. So it's hard to get to that point. And the third option is outsourcing it. And that is the option I ultimately went with because it was the only one that really I could do. And from there, you can, look in the United States or wherever it is that you're based, or you could look offshore. And in the United States costs way more, to the point where it wouldn't have been affordable for me. And so what I ended up doing is finding a dev shop with a project manager who's based in Los Angeles,
Oh, great.
who has teams offshore. And so he works with those teams directly. He's done projects with them over time. He has those relationships, but he's based in LA. So it's easier for us to kind of communicate in our time zone, be able to kind of, have somebody who understands what we need to do. And then he communicates it to the team offshore. It does have some ups and downs, and I'm happy to
Sure.
dive into those. But yeah, that's what we ended up doing.
So with the communication, because I feel like that's the hardest part, because with us, we have, teams kind of all over, but what I've noticed the most is the communication and trying to get it as clear as possible to that person. And that
So
always,
there's less back and forth.
Yeah, just because it seem,
and edits and revisions.
Yeah, it just seems hard sometimes to actually get it all the way through and figure out, oh, okay, this is what I was really trying to say, but they're not there in person. And like Erin and I, obviously we live together, we're everything. So it's easy to communicate, but I do notice that struggle with people overseas or even in LA that I'm just not communicating with on a daily basis. Has that slowed it down a little bit, or have you figured out a great way that we need to steal from you to communicate? Because I cannot do it well.
So the challenge that I was referencing was the communication challenge. And I think actually, and I love that we have a project manager in LA that makes it, possible for us to communicate in our time zone and our language, but it's actually created this like game of telephone, and that's delayed communication. It's kind of things get sometimes lost, and our development is significantly delayed from what we initially kind of planned for. Okay. And recently we sort of just talked to him and we said, look, something's not working here. We need to be able to talk to the team directly. And so we actually added the project manager that they have on the ground there, not the actual developers, but we now have conversations directly with the project manager there. And it has really, really changed the kind of quality of the deliverables, the communication, how much information we're getting. And I think the other side, the flip side is he actually sees that we're real people. We're not just people that his boss talks to, and he sees what our passions are and he gets more invested in it. And so having that direct line of communication has made a huge difference. And I think if you are, planning to, outsource to a dev shop that's offshore, try to have that additional layer of communication if you can. I think there's some resistance sometimes because they're like, oh no, talk to the person in the US. But building that relationship with the person who's actually working on your app is really important and valuable.
Yeah, because it becomes like telephone. It's like, oh, let me tell you this, and then you tell that person, and you tell that person, and then just remove it.
And the time in between all of those communications, like it adds up over
time.
For
sure, especially when you're trying to launch something. And are you currently just a web app, or are you going to launch on iOS and Android?
We're not going to be a web app. We're just going to be Android and iOS for the foreseeable future.
Okay, cool.
What's the time frame for that usually? How long ago did you start developing?
So we started development in June. It was supposed to take 3 months. As you can see, we are well past that now. And some of those delays are, due to what's going on in the world, COVID, teams offshore, access to Wi-Fi isn't as consistent as it might be here, people getting sick. And so there are all sorts of reasons that, one might expect delays, but we're a little bit past that now. And we're really hoping to kind of wrap things up soon. We're actually in bug testing now, so we're in good shape.
And with all the apps, because there's a ton of dating apps, I really do like your idea because it's so specific and it's very almost so trendy right now because Clubhouse is popping off. Everybody's on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is not monetized yet. How do you plan a way to monetize the app?
So just like any dating app, we'll have like a free tier and a premium tier, and the premium tier will allow folks to, let's say, filter for folks who don't smoke. I, for example, wouldn't necessarily want to match with someone who smokes. So being able to set those filters. So we'll have a premium model with additional features. We'll also potentially, consider advertising and how that can fit into the experience without ruining the user experience. I think that's something that other apps do in various forms. So we'll explore that. We also, down the line, once COVID has settled down, would love to do live events still. So that could be a source of revenue for us. And then we are doing our podcast, and, to the extent that we get advertisers on there, we'd be really excited. But either way, we're loving doing our podcast. So that's been a great opportunity too.
And what was your thought process to, at what point do you want to monetize it? Because I think there's I guess not a struggle, but pricing is always such a hard thing. We developed the product and we were struggling. Okay, what's the price? This is what, standard pricing is, but do we go a little higher, a little lower? What did you have any struggle figuring out, okay, we are going to monetize it, or did you want to go the free route for a little bit just to gain the user traction and then see how it went and then maybe charge them? What's kind of the plan there?
I think it's a struggle. I agree. I think in the dating space, thankfully, there are a ton of data points in terms of how different apps do it. And I don't necessarily know if I'd be able to dig into the timeline for when they launched a premium tier versus their free tier. That's something I never actually really thought of doing, but maybe I'll try digging into it more. Right now, I think we're hoping that our next set of features will be able to allow us to monetize, but we haven't decided, like, do we want to do this yet, or do we want to kind of let folks enjoy the experience at this free level for a little longer before we add this extra layer? It'll depend on kind of the traction and what we need to continue to build. And so if we are able to, have a revenue stream from someplace else that supports the continuation of the app, then we can certainly keep it free for longer.
It's always an interesting idea too, because Amazon went at it. It's like, we're going to be a loss leader. We're going to try to gain as much traction as possible, be as cheap as possible, give you free shipping, do everything we can to attract the users.
Get them addicted.
Yeah, get them addicted, get them hooked. And that is with, like, right now, Clubhouse. I don't know how they're valued at like $1 billion or 20 billion, whatever they're valued at right now. There's only 20 million users on the app and they're valued well over $1 billion. How, like, for me, thinking about it, I would be stressed out all the time because I don't know how I would go about doing that and figuring out the exact way of, because it can also be like a premium app where you do pay right away and you get into it, like a Procreate, like, if you want to draw on your app, like, this is the one you want to use because it has all the features, you pay for it and then you get it.
League, we paid for the League and it was a wait list to get in. It made it feel like a more desirable app. Like, oh wow, I better, like, I'm lucky to be on this one. Like, I'll pay whatever it takes if I can get it, type of thing. And that's kind of how Clubhouse started a little bit. Like, you had to get an invite, but now anyone.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's still an invite only. But for you, are you going to not crowdfund? Are you going to raise any capital to maybe fund it a little bit, or what are your plans there? I mean, you don't have to like tell us everything. I'm just curious.
No,
maybe
we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it. So we're hoping sometime this year to either take a small business loan, and the benefit there is that you don't have to answer to investors, or go the investor route, whether it's trying to do kind of an angel round or a seed round. And so we're exploring our options and trying to figure out, what'll situate us for the best scenario down the line. And we're not sure quite yet. We're kind of weighing the pros and cons of each, and both of them are going to be a process, and we want to be able to demonstrate kind of success through the beta. And so we're kind of going to, I think, see how the beta goes. One of the challenges with our beta in a dating app, though, is really getting the users. And in such a crowded space, it's a challenge because how do you rise above the noise? And then in the dating space specifically, we actually cannot advertise on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit until the app is launched, because they all have restrictions against dating apps because they want to prevent lewd content, inappropriate, interactions, and so on. So they need to be able to approve it and review it. And so we haven't been able to do any paid marketing. And so we're in this place of like, well, we haven't been able to advertise. All of our growth has been organic. Our wait list is entirely organic. How do we want to approach this beta period once we have an app? Do we want to, really throw money at paid marketing so that we can increase the user base? On a dating app, you really need that two-sided marketplace to be successful. And so we're in this place of trying to figure all of that out so that we can prove out the concept and then get funding in one form or another.
Yeah, we actually we're in our first round of raising capital for our company, Dope Dog, and we did it on a crowd investing platform. So it's kind of nice. It's a public safe note or a crowd safe note. And with that,
do you mind if I ask what platform? I'm just super curious.
So it's called Republic. I think it's republic.co or IO. I think it's CO, republic.co. And we're currently in that. We're about to end in like 25 days or something. But we liked it because it felt like we were getting customers and people that were truly interested and want to be a part of this, instead of us like trying to find investors. And we had plenty, like I would say over hundreds of calls with investors about getting people invested into us. But for us, we were so small that everybody wanted to invest more, and that would dilute our equity. So for us, it didn't make sense to go with, say, somebody wanted to invest $1 million, that we can't do that because we don't want to give up all that equity.
And they made it easy as a first time raise for us, being able to kind of help us draft the terms and, walk through it a little bit.
Mhm.
I think it was a great first round option, at least for us.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
especially just the kind
Gets
of
you out there.
now we were also 3.5 years into Dope Dog, but this is
Mhm.
when we decided we kind of want to do this. And I'm sure, putting your dating app up there, I think would be a hit for sure. But it always is. It's so up to you how you want to do it. And that's the struggle. It's like, what's the best choice? And we didn't even know if this was going to work. We were scared. We're like, I don't know. Is anybody going to invest? And luckily people did, but it was scary.
And it also
I think
like,
it's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's a good alternative marketing avenue because, like
Mhm.
yourself, we can't run paid ads.
Well,
so
she can, but
not yet. But yeah,
yes,
but
we
yeah,
can't.
we're like in a regulated industry, so getting creative and thinking outside the box and finding, more ways to reach more people.
Absolutely. And I was just giggling because what you were saying about, you don't know necessarily what's the best route. I feel like it's sort of like student loans where you're just like, I just need money. I don't really need to think about what it means down the line. I'm not going to think about what I have to do when I need to repay it. And all of a sudden you graduate 4 years later and you're like, oh crap, now I understand what all of that money really means and how it's going to look for me for the next, 10, 30 years and paying this off. And I think it's the same thing with a business. At a certain point, you're just like, I just need money to scale this concept. And you're not necessarily thinking about if I take it in X form from X person with these terms, what does that mean for me down the line? Because you don't necessarily, as a first time founder, at least I don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of everything or how I should be structuring everything. And so you learn the hard way what you should and shouldn't have done. And so it's something that, I've made mistakes in my time, leading Blink, but I'm trying to be more mindful, especially around funding, because it's stressful. And I don't want to, turn around in 10 years and be like, that was a huge mistake to go that route.
I think the thing that helped us the most was we went through an accelerator, and I think it ended right when COVID hit. So we did it early or late 2019 into early 2020 of last year. And I thought that helped us understand a lot and also get in front of a lot of people to pitch, which was our hardest. I think the hardest part for us was to pitch the company and sell it and understand how to do that. And for people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs and people starting businesses are listening, but going through it, it sounded silly at first because I didn't understand what it was. It's like, okay, we got an idea. We're already selling it. How is this going to help it? But I think understanding those basics, that helps the most when sometimes you already think you're past that. Because I was thinking about it with I went to film school. I think a lot of people that didn't go to film school don't understand the technical aspect of creating a film. But when you watch film, you think you know film, but you really don't. And I think that's the same way with business. You made a business. You might not know really how this business, how you got there. And then when you understand, it's like, oh, maybe I really have something here because people actually like it. And now I can just accelerate that fire a little bit. I'm just ranting. I don't know. That was just my thought on it. It's so you're in such an interesting spot. I'm excited for you. I think the app is the Blink is going to be great because it's very it's so trendy right now. And I think it's going to be a hit. So I'm excited when it launches.
Yeah.
I wish we were single so we could go on and date.
Maybe she'll do a friend version down the line.
Yeah, we do have plans, not necessarily to kind of mirror Bumble BFF, but we do have plans and desires to expand beyond the dating vertical because we think this concept of getting past looks-based assumptions and getting to know people applies in every aspect of life.
Even hiring.
And so, yep, even in hiring.
What did you think about the Bumble BFF? Because I think at some point it was pitched to you to almost get on it as a business owner or find people in your town, but I never felt like me meeting another dude on there was is that really going to happen? Does he actually want to be my friend or does he want to date?
I've heard people meet other people through Bumble BFF. I've spoken to people who've had success. I think in those scenarios, basically every time it was somebody who moved to a new city and really made a commitment to meeting new people. But I remember in my experience, I did meet with some of the people that I connected with on Bumble BFF and nothing came of any of those relationships. And I think I was living in New York. I lived in New York for 10 years. I just kind of wanted to meet new people outside of my little, school bubbles and work bubble. And I think I just maybe wasn't as invested as I needed to be in order to really like, and I didn't have the time. For me, getting 16 people being like, hey, let's get something to eat this week. It's like, no, I have time for one person.
Yeah.
Because I had everything else around me, my life already set up. Whereas if you move to a new city and you're looking for new friends, or you're really invested in it for some other reason, in the dating context, you want to find a partner, then your approach to it is going to be a little bit different. So I think it can be successful, but it requires a lot of time and commitment. And the beauty of Blink, again, you could do it from your couch. It's 10 minutes long. And we hope to, in the dating context, to tackle that, but obviously beyond one day.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. Do you want to ask the question, babe?
Yeah. So we always like to ask our guests what their call me crazy moment was. Maybe you're in it, maybe you have one, but it's kind of like when you veered off and did something and kind of, threw everyone for a loop.
I mean, leaving legal practice, I would say, is the moment that I was like, call me crazy, but I'm, a year and a half into being a lawyer and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and I'm done with it. And I didn't know exactly what my life would look like after leaving law. I'd planned to be a lawyer since, I don't even know, high school, maybe even before. And, I invested so much time, so much money into it. And within months realized I didn't want it. And so I was worried about what other people would think. I was worried about my parents, worried about colleagues, my old classmates. And I just realized none of it was worth it. It wasn't worth the money. It wasn't worth, what people thought of me. I was too young to spend the rest of my life unhappy. And so I was like, call me crazy, but I'm just going to quit and find something that brings me more joy. And in that journey, I also realized, it would be fine if what I did next, I didn't enjoy either, because I'm still young and I can still pivot again, and I can learn from every experience and keep moving forward. And we don't have to be married to the thing that we're doing at any given time. We can keep growing from it. And it might be hard because people don't necessarily give you the benefit of the doubt when you're trying a new career path, but it's possible, and you just need to find the right chances.
How long did it take you to actually quit? Like, was there a 6-month period where you're like, I got to get out of here, I'm done?
I would lasted a year and a half. I quit within a year and a half. So I think it was pretty quick, but at the time it felt like eons.
Well, so when you were in there for a year and a half, was it like 1 month before you were about to quit, like whatever, 14 months in or something? You're like, okay, I gotta get out of here. I think I'm done. I think I'm gonna go find my next venture. What was that like point? Because it wasn't the first day. It was like over the course of that year and a half. You're like,
well, she's been in it for, you went to school for it, law school. That's all.
And I didn't enjoy law school either. You'd think that would have been a red flag. But they kept saying it's not representative of real practice, but real practice, I would say, is worse. I think so. I started the firm job, I think it was like October, because they usually, you graduate and then you have a few months off. So I started in October. I think by December, I was like, this is not for me, and I need to figure out an alternative. And there was a lot of soul searching in between in terms of like figuring out what that next step would look like. I was living in Manhattan, so I didn't have the luxury of saying I'm going to quit my job and be unemployed until I find the next thing. And so I was really lucky. It took me, I think, about a year to find something, and I think part of that time was defining what it was that I wanted to do, and then part of the time was actually interviewing and finding something. So again, it felt like a really long time, but looking back, it wasn't as bad as it could have been in terms of getting out.
And there's so many people still in a job they don't want years later.
Yes.
And hearing stories like yours is really inspiring, because I totally understand. And sometimes it's tough to, rip the Band-Aid off.
Well, yeah, a lot of people,
along and,
a lot of people don't want to take that risk either, to just jump off and, do something else, because you've invested so much time, and that risk is a scary point of, I'm going to go do this. And, you're working, where are you working now? I mean, you don't have to say what you're doing, but you're working a full-time job and starting.
I am working. I'm a product manager by day at a legal tech company, and doing Blink by night. So, what I was doing before being a product manager was legal operations. So it's like applying legal tech in different spaces, making teams more efficient, working cross-functionally. And so I was still using my law degree. I think it was actually, it really served me well when I was applying, because it gave me a lot of credibility.
For sure.
But thankfully was not practicing, was not drafting agreements, was not negotiating anything, which was, so much better for me.
I feel like lawyers are the one career where you always hear like, oh yeah, I was a lawyer, or I was a doctor, and I left to go do something like totally different. because I don't know what it is. Like you guys go through all this schooling and you're like, this is done. I'm done with this. I'm going to go do something better. But you always hear them because they're always so successful because you guys went through all this schooling.
You could do anything.
Yeah.
Now.
It's funny you say, I think that's true, but I think a lot of employers are like, well, you're a lawyer. Why would you be applying for this marketing thing? Or you're a lawyer. Why would you be applying at this company that does something like nothing to do with law? Sorry, you might hear a little squeakiness from pups right now. I'm sure you understand. I see your little pup walking in the background.
They're walking around back there.
They have a lot to contribute to, it sounds like. A lot of thoughts on this.
Maybe they're going to have a little chat after this.
Maybe. But yeah, I lost my train of thought a little bit. So I think a lot of people kind of have these expectations when you have XYZ degree, like, why would you be doing this? You're not qualified for that, even though you're overqualified and underqualified simultaneously. And so I think the challenge is finding the right person to give you a chance. And some people will think outside the box and some people won't. Like, just a little anecdote, when I was looking for a product manager role, I remember, it's kind of hard to get into product management. Folks, it's the sort of thing like, oh, you can't be a product manager unless you've already been a product manager, which is crazy. Obviously, everyone came from something. And I talked to somebody, just like an informational conversation. He was a VP of product at a legal tech company, and I sent him my resume. He said he would look at it and give me some comments. It took him a really long time to get to it. I guess he forgot. And he emails me a month after I sent it to him. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't have a chance to look at it until now. You will never get a job with this resume as a product manager. But in that 1 month time, I actually did get a job as a product manager with that resume. And so it was just this, like, I'm reading his email, like pointing at all these things in it. And he was like, the format of it, the wording, the things that you have in here, you're never going to get a job with this. And I'm just like, well, clearly that's not the case, because I did. And it was just this moment.
Like, why?
It was just this moment of realization. Like, some people think inside the box and they want a certain thing. And if you're not that certain thing, they're going to say no. And some people are creative thinkers and they're willing to give someone a chance if they see the passion or the skill set or whatever it is in that person. And so it's hard and it's grueling when you want to switch careers, but it's about finding the place that will let you do it.
Yeah. And sometimes being new to a field, you have a better outlook because you're not already inundated or just jaded about it. You're coming in with fresh eyes. So I think that's a bonus. Also, having law background, which clearly I don't, doing the whole operating agreement for your business, like being able to like review contracts, write your own or whatever, that would be amazing, because we're, struggling with that, having to like ask really what seem like dumb questions because we don't have a background.
Ask all the questions. I've made mistakes too, trust me, in, drafting of legal agreements. Ask all the questions. No question is stupid. Don't just sign things, really read through them, because it will matter later.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. The blinkdate.com, and then the app will be out soon, or is it out now for beta testing? When can people go?
It will be out soon. We want to finish our bug testing, so we're hoping within the next month or so. Okay. I won't give a hard date because I don't want to. We've had enough delays. I've learned my lesson, but within the next month or so is our goal.
Cool.
We're excited to try it.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Taly.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah.